Hi guys, it's Steffi from the Novelty Corner and I am going to share with you my mid-December wrap-up. I have so far read 8 books this month and I DNF'd a 9th book, and I thought I would just, keep my mid-month wrap-ups going because that's working for me at the minute and it saves a really long video at the end of the month. And it's December, so it's going to be crazy busy at the end of the month. So let's get into it. The first book that I finished in December was The Fifth Avenue Artist Society by Jo Calloway, which I did talk about in my TBR and my November wrap-up because I had started it at the end of November but I hadn't finished it. This book was sent to me for review by Allen and Unwin and I enjoyed it. It's a historical fiction and typically that's not really my genre, but it was an interesting read, and it follows Ginny, our main character, who wants to be a writer, and it is 1891 and women aren't really considered to be the ideal candidates for becoming a published author. So this follows Ginny's journey as she seeks to become a published author, her involvement in the Fifth Avenue Artist Society, which is a group for artists of all inclinations, from traditional artists, authors, musicians, etc., getting together and critiquing one another's work and providing support and feedback and all that sort of thing, along with the backdrop of Ginny trying to cope with the loss of her childhood love and a whole lot of other things that go on in the background, which were totally unexpected. I have to admit, I did find the first half of the book slightly challenging to get into. Once we sort of got into, there's a little bit of an element of a mystery thriller aspect about halfway through. That really gripped me and I kept reading right until the end. Overall, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was a really good read. The second thing that I started in December was Griffin by AJ Blakemont, and this was a e-arc that I was sent by NetGalley, and I was really excited about the premise of this book, about these mirror souls from a mirror universe, and kind of creepy in a soul-sucking, paranormal, creepy way, and I was just really disappointed. The writing style really didn't grip me. I really did want to like this book because it was totally up my alley with the paranormal aspects and all that sort of thing, but alas, no. But I'll pop a link to it down below if you want to check it out just to see what the premise was, because I didn't get very far into it at all. It was a struggle for me to pick it up and read it, which for me is a sure sign that it's probably not for me. Next up, I read Fairest by Marissa Meyer, which is the novella series about Lavana. It was okay. I gave it about a 3.5. It sort of felt like one of those books, one of those stories where they're trying to humanize the villain character to make you feel something for them, and quite frankly, I didn't. It was interesting to get a little bit more of a backstory on the history of Luna. That part I was really, really happy with. I thought the backstory for Winter in this was really interesting, and I do think it was a good idea to read this before I read Winter. I mean, I think you probably could have read Winter without it, but there were definite nods to the events that happened in Fairest that made it just a little bit clearer. So overall, 3.5. And then I read Winter because basically I marathoned the rest of this series, and I was so glad that I did. The only thing I will say is I think this book was too long. I love all the characters, I love the storylines, but it dragged just a little bit. And the ending felt a tad rushed, but it was nice to see how it all wrapped up, to see how all of the characters managed the events that had transpired in the first 3 books and culminated in this one. Ultimately, Scarlet and Wolf, still some of my favourite characters. Thorn, I love Thorn. Cress is awesome. The only 2 characters that I really struggled to get into in this series were Cinder and Prince Kai. It sort of sucks because they're the sort of linchpins of the series. To be honest, I tend to always like the more side characters anyway. Overall, I gave Winter 4 out of 5 stars. I think the series as a whole for me averaged about 4.54 stars. That's pretty good for a book series. And then I read Stars Above, which is the novella series of short stories about the characters from the Lunar Chronicles, and I think in my TBR I said it was a set of sequel novellas, but it really isn't. It was sort of mixed in between, and there are all sorts of really fun stories in there, and it was nice sort of to get a bit of a background. I really liked the story about Michelle Benoit, who is Scarlett's grandmother. That was really interesting to read. Overall, I gave Stars Above 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was just really nice to see a few more stories set in this universe, to see how a few things happened prior to the books and to sort of let all those pieces fall into place, and also to see how some things transpired at the end as well. If you haven't already picked up Stars Above and you've read the Lunar Chronicles, definitely do check it out. It's worth reading. And I just sort of read a couple of the short stories every night and got through it. The next book that I finished in the month of December was The Devil's Prayer by Luke Gratias. Every time I try to say this name, I stuff it up. So I'm going to pop the book on the screen so you can sort it out. This was another arc that I received from NetGalley, and I really, really enjoyed this book. It is a horror thriller sort of book. I love thrillers. Usually those are the ones that grip me and make me want to read more and more and more. Okay, this book was about a girl named Siobhan who finds out that her mum, who had disappeared many years ago, has committed suicide, and that prior to her suicide she had been living as a nun in Spain. Basically the story follows Siobhan as she tries to uncover the mystery of her mother's disappearance and why she disappeared. As she travels to the convent where her mother last lived, she finds a diary that Denise, her mother, kept, and it details the events of her life leading up to a deal that Denise made with the devil. I love that sort of thing. I love that angels, demons, heaven, hell sort of story. I suppose you could sort of compare it in the same vein to the Da Vinci Code in tone, but it's not really. The whole thing is pretty much told through these letters that Denise has written to her daughter, and I found that really interesting because you're getting a first-person account interspersed with moments that are happening in real time. And this book is obviously the first book in a series. Where the book ends up leaves it wide open for another book, which is great because I think it would be really interesting. And I thought that the way that the deals done with the devil were handled were really, really interesting. It is not for the faint of heart. There are a lot of trigger warnings in here. So there's rape, there is attempted murder, there is murder, there is all sorts of things. I've got a review for it. I'll link that down below. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I did really, really enjoy it, and I can't wait to see what the author puts out next. Then I read Star Wars Catalyst, a Rogue One novel by James Luceno, and I enjoyed it. Like I said, I love reading Star Wars books. I haven't read a Star Wars book in ages. I've got 3 more on my TBR for this month, but I thought I would read this one first because Catalyst has been released. I still haven't seen it yet, and shame on me. I need to go and see it. This is really sort of a filler novel, I felt. There's not a huge amount of action in it. There is a little bit towards the end, but it is definitely setting up the events of this film. So even having not seen the film yet, I know that this is just setting up the backstory for that. So in the film, I think our main character is Jin. In this, Jin is only a little girl. And at the start of the book, she hasn't even been born yet. So it follows the role her parents play in the creation of the Death Star, and there's a whole lot of politics going on in the background. So yeah, if you sort of like those backstory, little detail-y bits and pieces, this is really good. And it was sort of nice to see what sort of happened between the rise of the Empire and the rise of the rebellion. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I can't wait to see the film. I really, really want to go and see the film. Then I read End of Days by Susan E. because I ordered this and it arrived and I have no self-control, so it wasn't on my TBR, but because I really want to finish series this month, I read it. So this is the 3rd book in the Penryn and the End of Days series. I have to say this book was just a tiny bit disappointing compared to the other books. I did rate it 4 out of 5 stars, where the other 2 books, I think I gave them 5 out of 5 stars. I think Penryn is still awesome. Rafe is still awesome. Or Raph, whatever you want to call him, still awesome. Sort of the angels in this series are really interesting to read about too, because the politics between what's happened between Angel and Fallen here is really, really curious, and there are a few twists and turns in it. I really liked the way that they sort of played out the apocalypse or impending apocalypse in this book. I really love the ending for this book. I think that was a really fascinating way to end the book. So if you haven't read it, definitely do check out the series. It is really good. It is really quick and easy to read. I love Penryn. I think she's just a really strong female character. I love her family. Her family are just nuts. And it's awesome. The last book that I read in the first half of the month was Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, which is the 2nd book in the Six of Crows duology and the 5th book set in the Grisha universe, and it was good. It was good. This is one of those books that I was intimidated by because everyone absolutely loves it, and I probably don't love it as much as everyone else, but I did enjoy it. And I read it all in one sitting. Guys, I literally sat down and read for about 4.5 hours because I just wanted to know what happens. And I think this is a really nice conclusion to the events of Six of Crows. I felt that in this book you get a little bit more of an insight into Kaz's thought processes, because he is always one step ahead of everyone else, but this time we actually get to see a little bit more of how he gets from A to B, basically. But that said, Kaz is not my favourite character in this series. At the end of this book, Nina and Matthias and Rylan and Jesper are my faves. There is no ifs, buts or whens about it. They're my favourites. If you like heist novels, if you like thrillery, actiony, young adult fantasy, definitely check this out. I will say I am actually happy that I read the Grisha trilogy in between Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. There are a lot of nods to the Grisha trilogy in this book. I don't think you really need to read them for Six of Crows, but I think you might need to read them before you read Crooked Kingdom, which is totally fine. But you also, look, you could get away without doing that as well. The only thing I will say about this book, about this series, is I don't for a second believe that these characters are teenagers. And in my head, I don't picture them that way at all. It is considered young adult because they are supposed to be 17 or 18 years old. I don't buy that. Maybe controversial. I still love the characters just as much, but in my head, they are a little bit older because, no. But I did love it. And I did give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. And I will recommend this series to anyone who likes a good fantasy series. So that is my wrap up for the first half of December. Not bad. These are some chunky looking books. I still have quite a few things from my TBR from the start of the month, and I'll pop that video linked up above, so if you want to check out the things that are remaining on my list. I have also received quite a few review copies this month, and I've also won a few Goodreads giveaways, which was really exciting. So I do have a few more books that I want to try and fit in before the end of the month, and I'm thinking about doing the holiday booktubeathon, which I just saw a video for. I think that will be really fun to do 3 days of readathon cramming before the end of the year. So hopefully I will get through the remainder of my TBR for the month. Let me know down in the comments, what are you currently reading? How are you feeling about it? What do you want to get onto next? I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're having a wonderful day, and I will catch you guys in my next video. See you later, guys.